Hello and welcome to Talking with Famous People. I am host Eric, and I'm here in the room with some individuals. Hami, Chad, Megabro are the ones that are currently online. And we are talking now about Socionics Intertype relationships. And I want to talk about two types in particular, I think. I said one initially, but I want to talk about the supervisor relationship, supervisor-supervisee, and I want to talk about the benefactor-benefactee relationship, or benefactor-beneficiary relationship. Okay, so let's actually start with that one. The beneficiary-benefactor relationship is one that I know well from both angles. I'm the benefactor and Abraham the beneficiary in that relationship, I being ENTP and he being ENFJ. And I do feel like it plays out very much like that. Some of the ways in which the Socionics descriptions of the intertype relationships say that I might not take my beneficiary seriously in some regards, or undervalue some of his contributions, or undervalue the things that he's good at because I'm decent at them myself. So, I think the core thing to note about these relationships is it has to do with what each party is strong with and what each party is weak with. So, for the benefactor relationship, ENFJ goes FENI, SETI. And their seventh slot function is going to be SI. But their fourth slot is TI. Now, their fourth slot TI is our second slot, the ENTP second slot. And their first slot is our third slot. So, the impact of this is that while they're very weak at TI, the ENTP is very strong at TI. And while the ENFJ is very strong at FE, the ENTP is reasonably strong at FE as well. So it feels as though in the relationship, the benefactor has a lot more to give and the beneficiary has a lot more to receive and a lot less to give. There's a similar dynamic in the supervisor-supervisee relationship, except with the supervisor, again, I'll use my own type as an example because it's what I'm most familiar with. My supervisor is INFP, and my supervisee is ISTP. And when I was interacting the other night with Basement Overlord, and he's a type who's my supervisee, he was telling a story about how he had this very SENI experience in the supermarket, and apparently I cut him off and immediately said, oh, that's a great example of a TETI contrast, drew a separate contrast than the one he was trying to establish, and proceeded on from there. Somebody in the comments pointed this out to me and said, see, that's a supervisor-supervisee relationship. And I was unaware I was even doing it when I did it, of course. I'm familiar with it on the other end from the perspective of the beneficiary, because my dad's a benefactor, and I'm the beneficiary. And that's played out very fine. That's played out fine because I could use his help, and he's not remiss to helping me. And it may be the case that he undervalues some of the things that I'm good at. Understandably so, because, he's much more outcome-oriented as an ESTJ than I am. And I've experienced this with some of my ESTJ friends as well, like Al Areno. He's ESTJ, and, I do tend to feel as though there's that dynamic with him and me as well. Mostly, I don't feel the need to press any other dynamic, let's say. But both these relationships, I think, are interesting because the people involved in them can get along just fine, and yet there's an implicit hierarchy almost that we tend to reject categorically as Americans, or at least as egalitarian Americans, but that I think is implicit in the relationship between the two types because of their respective cognitive function stacks. I wonder if anybody else in the room would like to comment upon these relationships, if you have your own experience with either the benefactor-beneficiary relationship or the supervisor-supervisee relationship.
Wait, what would be an INTJ's supervisor-supervisee?
Okay, well, your supervisor would be Well, let's see. If ENTP goes to INFP, then INTJ should go to ENFJ. So ENFJ, Abraham should be your supervisor, basically. I don't know if you know any ENFJs.
Yeah, I agree with that. Yeah, I agree with that.
And your supervisee then would be, mine's ISTP, so yours would be ESTJ. EST. My wife would be your supervisee, my ex-wife, ESFJ. And I think that
I
makes...
agree with the ENFJ because that whole thing that you were saying, that you were talking about between ENTPs and INFPs, where they calm me down. I feel like me as an INTJ, whenever I talk to ENFJs, they always calm down.
Makes sense. Well, I think for you, an ENFJ would find you particularly calming because you don't seem to be somebody who needs any management emotionally.
Yeah.
And ENFJs are all about managing everybody's emotions. So I think they probably feel like, oh, I can relax. This person doesn't need me to manage their emotions at all. JC, any thoughts from your perspective as an ESFP? Your supervisor would be ISTP. That would be your supervisor. It would be basement overlord. Do you know basement overlord, JC? And if so, do you think he's your supervisor?
We've talked on here before, me and basement overlord, but I don't know. Like, I haven't really typed a lot of people in my life, so it's hard for me to say like how those relationships actually work.
Cool. Okay, well, the idea of it for the supervisor is that your seventh slot function, which is for you, TI, is it?
TI.
Okay, yeah. So that your seventh function slot is their dominant slot. So what's interesting is TI is a weird one to have in the seventh slot because it's not like you're not capable of thinking. You're certainly perfectly capable of engaging in conversations in which you talk about abstract stuff and reasoning and stuff like that. And I've noticed this with Evelyn, the debater Evelyn as well, who's also an ESFP. She's perfectly capable of doing TI stuff, but she doesn't seem to have any what I would call inertia with it. Like prompted to do it, she can do it, but left unprompted, she doesn't really engage in it on her own per se. Would you say that's an accurate, or how would you relate to that statement?
I relate to that statement. Yes, I agree. I don't do it on my own, but like if other people bring it up, then it's like, okay, this is what we're doing. Great, I can do that.
Right, and I think this is a big mistake that people sometimes make. They think non-thinking types somehow are not engaged in thinking, or aren't smart, or aren't capable of abstract analysis. I mean, that's simply not the case. Just as I'm very much engaged in my feelings a lot. You know, it doesn't, just because I'm not consciously and actively employing those for my own ends doesn't mean I don't feel strongly. You know, I have strong feelings too, just like anybody else. And you have strong ability to think, just like anybody else. It's just that that's not your habitual process. So I think then the ISTP, I guess, would provide for you a certain clarity of, because I know I was watching a video by Basement Overlord earlier today, and he was talking about how they're the decisive quadrant, that they like things to be clear and decisive and finalized. Do you think that's what the ISTP would provide for you?
I don't know. Decisive?
Apparently that's what that quadrant is. Somebody else was saying, yes, go ahead.
Well, gamma and beta are both decisive. They're just decisive in different ways.
Okay. So how do you think ISTP is decisive?
I have to like contrast that with ISFP. Oh, is this thing still working?
Yeah, it's still working.
ISTP would be like decisive on like political issues, and ISFP would be like decisive on like individual issues affecting themselves.
And which quadrant is ESFP?
Gamma.
Okay,
Would that be like decisive on issues affecting themselves?
I see. Okay, interesting. So then, anybody else want to talk about this supervisor or supervisee relationship, or benefactor beneficiary relationship? As I indicated, mine are the benefactor is ESTJ, my beneficiary is ENFJ, my supervisor is INFP, and my supervisee is ISTP.
Wait, how would a benefactor beneficiary relationship work?
Well, the way Socionics describes it is simply that basically, if one person is in a position of more everything, like, like one person's the boss, or one person is in the position of being older or having more resources or stuff like that, that the relationship works well if that's the benefactor and the beneficiary is the one who benefits. And the relationship simply doesn't work well if it's the other way around. So that if I have an ENFJ boss who's trying to help me, that relationship is going to fall apart very, very quickly, because I'm not going to feel as though he can help me with anything, really. At least in the way that a boss normally helps somebody. I might feel as though Abraham can help me when I'm the boss, but I'm probably not going to feel as though Abraham can help me when he's the boss. So, and it's because he's weak in my main tool function. That's why. His fourth slot is TI, my second slot is TI. I think that's the main reason why. Just like my dad is my benefactor, because as ESTJ, his main tool function is going to be SI, and that means he's going to be organized and have all of his shit together and be on top of stuff. And his main way is TE, so he's going to be super on top of stuff. He's going to be super handle on shit. Well, I need that because I'm bad at SI, it's my weakness, and I'm bad at TE. Or at least I'm not super good at it. It's unconscious for me. Any other thoughts on these two relationships? I'm glad we had a chance to chat about them a little bit, because I find them interesting in the regards that they are hierarchical in nature and sort of run counter to my own egalitarian nature, and yet I find them reflected accurately in the world. So that's what I have to say about that. Thanks for watching Talking with Famous People, and don't forget to eat plenty of cheese. If nothing else, take that away from this episode, please.